Hi, welcome to Family Law Friday presented by Florida Women's Law Group. My name is Betsy Corbett and I'm part of the marketing team. Family Law Friday is designed to be a resource for all women with the family law issue. Today we will be discussing prenuptial agreements and how it can work for you. Before we get started, I wanted to give you some information about our host, Heather Quick. Heather is the founder and owner of Florida Women's Law Group that advocates for women in North Florida. The firm educates and empowers women on the law so that they can find the strength to endure the process and come out better both financially and emotionally. Heather's been a licensed Florida attorney for the last 20 years with the majority of her practice in family law. Please join me in welcoming Heather Quick.
Thank you so much, Betsy, and thank you all for joining and tuning in again. And today we have a topic that we've talked about certainly before, written blogs about it in articles, and that is the prenuptial agreement. And this is a topic that I think out of all the things we talk about in divorce that we see in movies, in celebrities, like it's really popular and something that pretty much everybody has heard of a prenup, but nobody thinks it applies to them. And I am here to offer a different twist on it and some real things to think about if you are engaged, getting married, single, but want to get married one day. When we get married, things are great and everybody's in love, and you do have to follow the rules of the state, okay? Because depending on what state you're in, and that's what controls the laws as it relates to what you need to do to get married. If you need to get the marriage license, sometimes you need to say you read a book. Some other places, I think they used to do some kind of blood test or whatever. I don't know. I don't think they do that anymore. But, it's going to be different based on what state you're in. And then you're going to have to get that marriage certificate, brought to the ceremony, signed, whatever, and then that gets filed. Then you are officially legally married in whatever state you get married in. And then of course that's recognized by whatever state you move to. But okay, there's just certain legalities. There are some things you do have to do. Your best friend can't marry you. It has to be a notary public in Florida or a clergy member that has those certain powers. So that's just the way it works. Some states, not Florida, have what they call a common law marriage. And, I'm not even going to get into that because we're not talking about it and it doesn't apply in Florida. But again, every state's different, but think of it, hey, when I'm in Florida and I'm getting married, I got to follow the rules of Florida, whatever they may be. And for anybody who's been through a divorce, as you know, it's way easier to get married, much harder to get divorced. Maybe they should reverse that process, but that will probably never happen. So you get married very quickly. It's going to take a lot longer to get divorced in most situations. So when you're getting married, you're in love and you love this person. Now, isn't that the best time to think about how you would want to be treated in the event of a divorce? And at that moment, because you're an adult and we recognize that circumstances happen, life happens. And I truly believe everyone enters into a marriage with full expectation, hope, and a desire that they will, meet all their vows and, till death do us part. However, I'm a divorce attorney and I know the reality, and it just doesn't always work out that way despite everybody's best intentions. So, when you're entering into this agreement, which is a legal binding contract, now you're bound by the laws of the state that you live in if you want to separate. And what if at this time, at the very beginning, when you're going to marry this person and all of your hopes, your dreams, and your feelings are there, and the two of you to say, you know what, if this didn't work out, we would want to treat each other with respect. We would want to make sure each person was financially okay, and we would not want to leave this relationship, which now is filled with love, to be filled with hate. potentially the nicest thing, the biggest show of love you could do for your spouse would be to enter into a prenup and say, you know what, let's agree that we're not gonna fight over the wedding gifts. You know, the wife, husband, I get the wedding gifts. We're not gonna fight over family heirlooms or gifts like that. I'm not gonna take your mother's china. You know, I would want you to keep that. That's a part of your family if you want it. But hey, if we have children, shouldn't we decide now that our children would have things that were passed down through the years for family? And we wouldn't use something that's sentimental to hurt the other person. Why don't we decide now that if one of us decides not to work and raise our children, tend to the house, help the other start a business, that we're not going to try to cut them out of everything financially? And I mean, those are just some examples, because you just have the ability to do that. You have the ability to say, you know what, we're going to enter this marriage, and because we're entering it full of love and respect for one another. Why don't we say, you know what, if we have to exit it for whatever may happen down the road, which we don't know and can't predict, that we want to do so with the same amount of respect and love for one another. It's a different way to look at it that might take away the fact of this is not romantic. But, you know, when we look at it from that perspective, it's a real show of love to say, this is what I would want to do. Now, not everything can be decided in a prenup, but a lot of things can. And the things that can't really relate to how the children will, how you will share in the custody and the scheduling of the children, because that is ultimately in the best interest of the children at the time. And that goes to the fact that you can't prospectively determine what would be in their best interest, even though, you know, as a mother, you know, well, of course it would be with me, but that's just not legally sufficient in the state of Florida. But what you could do, and what you can think about, you know, this is an area where you could be really creative and say, but you know what, we agree now, we're not going to disparage one another. And we agree that if it doesn't work between us, that doesn't mean that our children don't deserve to, you know, only think of us in a positive light. We're not going to disparage one another. And it also means that maybe we're not going to enter into new relationships and introduce them to our children prematurely. Things like that. Now, I know it takes a very grown-up, rational approach to talk about this in such a way, but it very well may allow you and your fiance to have a great conversation that could really provide you with a stronger foundation with which to begin the marriage. And I submit, maybe if it doesn't go that well, you may learn a lot that could save you a lot of heartache down the road. Not that I'm using this to try to stop the marriage, but the more you know going in, and the more honest conversations that you can have with this person that you are going to vow to be married to for the rest of your life, the better, I would say, because it's, you know, marriage it's two people working together. And as much as the work of marriage takes, and raising children and dealing with finances and making a lot of money, maybe not, you know, and just life, you know, navigating through your life and growing together. And as challenging as it can be at times, it also is rewarding as it can be at times. I'm telling you guys, the divorce is going to be more difficult. And even if the two of you know you want to do it, and you know it's best for you, it's best for your kids, it's the right thing to do, it's still a difficult process that we try to help certainly navigate for everybody. But having the conversation about how you would want to be treated and how they would treat you, more just even beyond the money. Because that's all we ever talk about in a prenup. That's all I've ever really talked about before is the money, the assets, and how to negotiate that. But if we really look at it from not as a place of this is because I don't really trust you and I don't believe in what I'm doing, that because I believe so much in what I'm doing, I'm willing to put it all out there in a prenup, and I'm willing to say, this is how I want things to go down. And I think that's a great opportunity for two people to really begin a conversation. I'd love to have that conversation with any woman who has proposed this idea to their fiance and they're all in, and really start to have a conversation that it's not necessarily your exit strategy, but it's a roadmap for if it doesn't go well. Because hopefully you've got a roadmap for what you think it's going to help it go right. Most people wing it. I'm not saying one way or the other, but if we can begin a conversation where you're starting a marriage with, I don't want to go through that, but you know what, if we do, why don't we agree we're going to handle it this way? Do as many things as you can. And if we don't, and then, okay, so now we've talked about how we're going to exit it with respect, dignity for one another based on the love we share today and the vows. But then also now let's figure out a plan how we're going to make this work. Like, what things should we truly be discussing? And should we share with each other what we want out of this marriage? I think that's really important, because after the marriage is not the time to have a conversation about children. And it's not the time to think, now I'm going to change his mind, or now, he's going to, change her mind. She's not going to continue to want that. She'll always want this. She may change her mind. Life changes, people change, we grow. And it's just a different way to look at it that allows you to not attach a negative to something that can really help you in your life and in your marriage. Now, I will talk about some of the specifics, but it may, one of the things you can talk about in a prenup is also, you can kind of outline some things that are important to you or important to him. And I know this may sound crazy, but if you have enough clarity, and that's really going to depend on your experience, either your relationships or watching your parents. So not everybody is going to come to this even considering how this will play out. But maybe have a conversation, how are we going to handle holidays? Because I have a family, you have a family. How are we going to do this? I kid you not. I remember one Thanksgiving, and I think I went 4 Thanksgiving meals. That's really too many. Like, do we have to do that all the time? Maybe we can visit the day before, the day of, the day after. Like, it's just exhausting, and it's not that great. Just a little side note, only did that once, but I think those are great conversations, because you may be like, well, we're spending Christmas with my family, and he may be very certain and just assume, no, we're going to go be with my family. And particularly if you don't all live in the same town, and nowadays people get spread out. It's just a thought. And it might be good to have those conversations and say, okay, because when things are good, it's easier to see someone's point of view. When you're mad, when you've been hurt, when life isn't going the way you want it, it's much harder to see another's point of view. As in divorce, it's harder. It's harder to see their point of view. I understand. But that's why I bring this up in the prenup. Those are things that could be discussed. And there are things such as, hey, we're going to still, we agree we should take vacation. We should have date nights. Are all these things going to be able to be held up? No, but guess what? You've talked about them on the forefront, and maybe then it's going to give you a better marriage. I think that it is important in a prenup to discuss how, how wealth is going to be handled, particularly if you're entering into it at different levels. Talk about it. If somebody, I got to tell you, if one person is, really doesn't have a lot of assets and the other one has a lot, you really should talk about it. Don't just assume that it's going to go one way or another. Many times in a second or third marriage, when you have children previously, one, you're grown up, you've been through it, but you have children from previous relationship and you have certain things set aside for them. And you're like, hey, I love you and I want to be with you, but if something happens to me, like that needs to go to my kids. It's not that I don't want to, take care of you, or if you want a divorce, like I don't want you taking or affecting what I consider their legacy. I think people are very, those are good conversations to have. And, that just leads into, there's a lot like maybe your parents have a trust set up or his do or an inheritance, and, talk about it. Don't just assume if we don't talk about it, it's never going to come up. But I guarantee more likely than not, you have different views on it or a different understanding. And until we discuss it, you're not going to know how the other person feels about it. And again, it may very likely lead to less misunderstandings during the marriage. Many times when there's a business, you really not always are both husband and wife listed as the owners of the corporation. And that's a really good time. Those are important things to think about in a prenup, because what you think is fair may not be what the law provides. And so therefore, this is a time when the two of you are having a discussion on what you think is fair. And like I said, it may not be what the law provides. So wouldn't that be nice for you, one, just to have some understanding, but two, then to have some clarity on how we would handle that. And, it also has to do with debt. You'll see in the studies and statistics that the majority of divorces, one or two in the topping the list is money and financial issues. But I would tell you, I think it's money, but it's really deeper than that. It is the way you're brought up financially and the way you think about money. And that's an end nobody ever talks about. That's very unromantic to have like financial therapy, financial counseling and understanding before you get married. That would probably save, 30% of the marriages, or prevent the marriages from going forward, but just kind of helping people see the other's point of view. But those things are embedded so deep in your families, in your beliefs, in the way you've been brought up, in what you've been exposed to. And it's really not a right or wrong, but so often it gets treated that way. And as part of the prenup process, something that can be extremely valuable is having some financial counseling just to bring the two of you together so that at least you understand the other's language, or you can come to some common terms. Like, listen, you're a spender, I'm a saver. Let's agree, there's a certain level of debt that that's not fair for you to put on me. And then while I'm saving, I should, that's not fair that you get to take that when you've been just spending, but you were making the same money too. And of course, prenup has a lot of legal terms, and legalese would be what we call it. But at the end of the day, those types of conversations, again, can do an amazing thing to really support your marriage and put you in a very strong foundation to move forward. And, more than that, it really does show love for the other person. And it can be a very romantic gesture to say, let's really strengthen these things and these topics that some would say aren't romantic to talk about, but coming from a divorce attorney, definitely not romantic talking about it at the divorce. If you really had a different take on it, it could be from the beginning. And these are things that don't call me the week before you get married. Okay, I told you right there, you wait till the last minute, you really don't have the opportunity to turn this prenup into something that's going to help you build your marriage. You're turning it into this, I've got to do this right before you get married. You're not going to be thinking it through, and that really doesn't allow for a lot of communication between you and your fiance, future spouse. So we really, you know, a lot of times you say, hey, at least 30 days, but it should be signed 30 days. I think now, like, with the ideas and thoughts I have as to how to really help a couple create a prenup that is a building foundation in their marriage, you should start this probably, you know, 6 to 5 months before any wedding date, or maybe even before you set a wedding date. You like agree, we're going to get married, but hey, we're going to take these steps because we want to invest in our future by discussing these things and really understanding how it will impact us in the future. If any of you are entering into a business transaction, a real estate transaction, you know, buying your first house, you do your due diligence. Hey, they're going to tell you, you got to get an inspection. You got to understand all what's wrong with the house. Do you want to fix it or not? Okay, why not have that open conversation? Because you're going to now enter into a contract that subjects you to the laws of the state. You don't get to just part how you want and make up your mind as to you want, unless you enter into a binding contract beforehand that really details how this whole thing is going to go down. So, you know, if you're planning to get married, thinking about it, you know, that's the time to educate yourself, for one, and maybe begin the conversation from a new perspective, which is, let's use this opportunity to create tools to communicate, the vocabulary that really addresses these things that are more likely than not going to come up in our marriage, that maybe give us, you know, more of a fighting chance out there than the statistics. And I would say, who better than to give you some advice of the issues that will likely come up in your marriage and maybe divorce than, you know, a divorce attorney who's been doing this for many, many years. And there are certainly the same, you see the same patterns and you see the same issues that challenge couples. And it's, you know, not that anybody is meaning to do anything one way or the other, but they haven't really entered into this with their eyes wide open and advocating for their marriage and having these hard discussions, because, you know, they're gonna present themselves in the future. So practice now is what I would advise. And if you are in this situation or know anybody who is, we are here to help you. And, you know, I started this firm to help women just like you, even before you're married, to really begin that journey in the best situation possible so that you don't end up needing a divorce attorney in the end. Because we're really committed to women and women fulfilling their purpose and living their fullest life. So I thank you so much for watching. Please respond with any questions or comments, and Betsy will tell you how to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you to everyone that was able to listen today. We're here for you whether you have a question about prenuptial agreements or any other legal issue. Please give us a call at 904-241-0012. Thanks. Have a good day.